Welcome to You and Your Pets. I'm Jim Horton. We're here with our resident expert, Dr. Ernest Rogers from the Maplewood Animal Hospital, and we discuss a wide range of pet issues and questions that you may be asking about pets. And tonight, Dr. Rogers, I would like to concentrate, if we can, on adoption and fostering of animals. Could you please explain what the options are for parents who might be considering adopting an animal for their children?
Well, I think it's important. It's a great topic, and I think it's important that we talk about this so people have an understanding about how the adoption process versus the fostering process happens. Adopting, usually people go to either a shelter, or there can be a number of different specialty breed adoptions, or you can just find them on the street. But whatever you're doing, you're taking a new pet into your home. And those pets, we normally just talk about dogs and cats, but I want to add in here horses as well, because there are adoption sites for horses. So the bottom line here is we have two basic ways of getting an animal into your house. One is by adoption, where you take it in, it becomes your forever pet, and it stays with you until, unfortunately, he dies or you have to give it up. Then there's a fostering, and a fostering sometimes is a lot better for a lot of homes, in that people who aren't sure about what kind of dog they want, or whether they want a dog or whether they want a cat, can foster an animal through an organization and find out just how that animal works with their pet, with their other pets, with their family, with their kids, and for their home.
What organizations foster animals in New Jersey?
I think there are a couple. One is the Animal Angels for, we're going to have a guest on from that organization. They foster it. There are a number of organizations such as PAWS, I think, might foster. You can go online and something like, and find different organizations that have fostering websites, and they'll allow you to take care of it. I know the Montclair shelter in particular now no longer has a shelter, and I believe all they do is foster animals.
Okay. What are the exact differences between fostering and adopting? I know you just mentioned it, but I mean, I know less about fostering than I do about adopting. So what is expected of the pet owner when they foster, say, a beagle or something like that?
Well, generally when you foster an animal, it's your animal, but often the organization will pay for the veterinary care and for the upkeep of that animal, for the maintenance of that animal. You might have to buy food and take care of the animal, but in general, the veterinary expenses are covered by some of the fostering groups. So fostering is a little less expensive. You're not locked into this animal as you would be when you have an adopted animal. If you have an adopted animal, you're sort of expected to keep it and make do with that animal and your pet, and have the family pet come into your house and be with you. It's a forever pet. When you foster an animal, if you find that you have it for 6 months and someone else would like to have this animal, then unfortunately you have to give it up to the other family, and they might take it in as an adoption. And so the difference really is a temporary versus a permanent situation.
Are most of these animals in good condition when they're fostered or adopted, or are these often rescue animals?
Well, all the rescue animals, we have rescue animals from Katrina, for instance, and I'm sure from Colorado there are going to be a lot of rescue animals coming in. And a lot of times these animals are displaced because there's been a natural disaster, or their owners have moved, or there's some other reason why this animal has had to be given up. And most of them are in good health and don't have behavioral problems, and they're doing just fine. But occasionally we do find, at least as a veterinarian, we find an animal will be adopted, it'll come to us, and we find it has a significant health problem that the owners were unable to take care of. And so for that reason they gave it up. They may or may not have mentioned to the adopting agency that it had a health problem, or they may have just given it up. And that's why some animals that you adopt or foster, you might find do have some health problems.
Is that the principal reason why animals are given up, because of health problems? I mean, the tragedies are unusual, like Colorado and Katrina and Hurricane Sandy. Those are not usual reasons for giving up animals, right? I mean, it's usually something else. They just don't sit well with the family, or?
Well, that's one of the reasons that we have foster now. We allow animals to go into a house. For instance, if you have a one-bedroom apartment and you say, I really have to have a shepherd, a German shepherd, and you have a 150-pound German shepherd, for some people that's going to work in a one-bedroom apartment because they're out of their apartment jogging or outside doing things. Mm-hmm. For other people, it's not going to work, and so that gives you a trial. But if you find that it doesn't work, then you've got to give this animal up to a better home, to a better quality of life. That's one of the reasons. People moving, people losing family, and spouses divorcing, which is an unfortunate common thing today. Neither spouse can take the animal and keep it. Sometimes we find that children become allergic, or the animal is destructive in the house, or the animal just doesn't have enough room. The quality of life for that animal is deteriorating. And so a lot of them are given up for very innocuous reasons and not related to health at all.
What are the characteristics one should be aware of before adopting or even fostering a pet? Are there certain expectations with an animal that, particularly a new owner, someone who really doesn't have much experience, what particular characteristics should they be aware of in doing this?
Right. Well, this goes back to, if you remember, one of our first shows back in 2000, I think it was 2010. One of our first shows, we talked about how to adopt the perfect pet. And to that issue, one has to be aware of one's own circumstances. In other words, you have to realize that I have a one-bedroom apartment. I can't take in a St. Bernard. Or I have a one-bedroom apartment and I would like a medium to small-sized dog, and that's going to work for me. Or I love to jog and a Chihuahua isn't going to keep up with me. So, I mean, those kind of things. It's about lifestyle. It's about ability to train, functionality with the animal. In other words, if you have an animal, some animals are, I don't want to say hard-headed, but some animals are more difficult to train than others. One is one of the dogs I have, the Belgian Malinois. Another one that's difficult to train is the Siberian Husky. It's not that they're bad dogs, they just need a lot of attention in terms of training. And if you don't have that ability or that time, then to choose that dog might be the wrong thing. So it's all about lifestyle, about understanding the breed, and I always recommend to all my clients, understand the breed, get a book, make sure it's the right breed for you. And then I also tell them to make sure that this is the dog that's going to work for your family. There's no sense in getting a dog that is going to be difficult to handle and dig out of the yard because it's being chased by the kids all the time. So we have to think of all those items before we adopt an animal.
So that's some of the pitfalls of adopting an animal. Are there any other major areas of concern? First of all, does the owner understand the amount of work that goes into having an animal around the house? That seems to me to be one thing that new owners just don't understand.
Well, that goes along with experience. If you have the experience with the animal or with the breed, because having experience with a dog that's a beagle might be very different than the experience you would have with a dog that is a German Shepherd. And so that's one of the issues. Clearly, understanding the breed and being able to work with them is a good start. But then we also have veterinary care. When I prescribe a drug for a dog that's 8 pounds, it's very much less expensive than a dog that's 108 pounds. Certainly dogs that are prone to certain diseases. For instance, Cocker Spaniels are prone to some eye diseases and prone to some ear diseases. And that might become an expense of and on itself that the owner wasn't expecting. But understanding the breed and understanding that that can happen will help you set aside the monetary necessities for that animal. And so, yes, clearly there's a lot of pitfalls, but one of the things one has to understand is the amount of money it's going to take to feed, to take care of this animal medically, and what the animal needs in exercise and love and care.
Mm-hmm. Some of the organizations, or I guess maybe all of them, we were talking before we came on the air, have kinds of background checks. And I noted that you like some of the background checks and you disliked others rather intensely. Why exactly is there a background check, particularly whether you're going to foster or whether you're going to adopt? What is the issue there?
Well, as you know, I am the forensic veterinarian for the state, and we see some horrendous things. One of the more horrendous things that we see when we investigate crimes against animals is something called hoarding. That's where people feel no one can take care of these animals as well as I can, and so I'll take in this animal, I'll take in another animal, I'll take in another animal. So that's one issue why we have background checks. We want to make sure that the person's appropriate. We want to try and help them make the right decision. As we said, a 250-pound St. Bernard in a one-bedroom apartment might not work. So those are some of the things that the people running the shelters or running the kennels would be able to help with. In addition to that, we want to make sure that there is sufficient understanding of the breed and sufficient monetary background and room for the animal to be used or kept in a lifestyle that would be appropriate for that animal. So background checks can always be reasonable. Some of the more invasive background checks actually involve bank accounts, finding out your bank account, having a home inspection, asking for your forensic information. In my opinion, and this is only my opinion, our background check should be limited to references, veterinary references if they're available, and possibly just making sure that the facility will take the animal where you're living and that you have appropriate accommodations for the animal.
Okay, well, we only have about a minute or so before we have to take a break. Is there anything else about fostering and adoption that our viewers should understand?
Yeah, I think I grew up with a pet, and I was very fortunate that my parents grew up with pets, and I've always had a pet in my life. I think adoption is a wonderful, wonderful way to go for any child that has to live in a home. But for those who can't adopt, fostering is one option, and even the seeing eye dog community has fostering animals for 6 months, where they give them to you for 6 months and you give them back. So all these things are great options, and I think it's a wonderful way for a child to grow up.
Well, we have two special guests coming up in the second part of this show. This is You and Your Pets with Dr. Ernest Rogers. I'm Jim Horton, and we'll be right back.
Television is a powerful and influential medium that allows different groups the opportunity to produce programming that directly affects their own communities. Public, educational, and government access channels ensure that all people, regardless of race, age, gender, disability, religion, or economic status, have access to local government information and the use of a public communication forum. Make sure everyone has a voice. Support your local PEG channels.
Welcome back to You and Your Pets. We're here with our special guest, Dr. Nancy Sapanara with Apache. Apache is a Greyhound. And Jeanne Hogel with Bella.
Patty Pan.
Patty Pan.
Bella couldn't make it today.
Okay, Patty Pan. And Dr. Rogers, do you want to take over at this point?
Well, yeah, I'd like to welcome our guests. They're both people I've known for a while, and I'm proud to say that Nancy, Dr. Sapanara, has adopted Apache, and this is not her first, but her third adoption. And Jeanne has adopted this, well, not yet, but soon to adopt this little cat. But I know that she has. We have 3 patients in common, that all of whom have been adopted. And so I just want to say thank you very much for doing your part to help the population of animals. It's very good, and I'm very pleased. Well, today our subject is adoption and fostering. And Nancy, I know you adopted this, and this, as I said, wasn't your first animal. So tell me, how did you go about deciding that the Greyhound was the adoption that you wanted?
Well, first of all, thank you for having Apache and I on your show. It's a pleasure. I first found out about Greyhounds many years ago. I believe it was when I was living in Arizona, where they still have racing. And I fell in love with the breed, not only for their regal elegance, but their quiet demeanor. And I knew that I had wanted one once I could have a facility, a house for one. So I adopted my first one about 10 years ago. And as you said, Apache's now my third.
And has this been a pleasant? I mean, I love Apache and you love Apache, and I see the bond you two have. So it's worked out very well. Have you found that all your adoptions have worked out well?
As with everything in life, some are better than others. It takes an amount of training, an amount of getting used to. I have to say that Apache's been the easiest to get used to. Usually when you adopt an animal, sometimes they're in a foster home prior. In my case, Apache was in a foster home previously, and before I adopted her. So she was already housebroken in my case, and she made the transition into my home quite well.
Okay. And so you have Apache. How much of an adjustment is it? I want our viewers to understand that it's not all the dog adjusting to you, it's you adjusting to the dog as well. It means that if you haven't had a dog previously, now you got to get up in the morning to take them for a walk. You've got to make sure they're fed, you got to make sure they're housed, you got to make sure that there's someone there to look after them. I understand you're going away tomorrow and you've made arrangements for Apache to stay with a friend.
Right.
So how much of adjustment, and was it a good adjustment for you?
It's a good adjustment because it gets you in a routine, and it's also good to have your pet in a routine. There's no late sleeping in on the weekends. You get up at a regular time. You come home from work at a regular time because the dog's waiting for you. You make sure the dog's fed at a regular time. This is all good for the dog, and it's also good for yourself. You do have to make arrangements when you go away, but it's all part of the care and love you give to the animal that you bring in your home.
Right. And I find, just to add to that, my mental health has helped, particularly by having a dog.
Yes.
My dog does wake me up in the morning and does jump on my bed and licks my face, my two dogs, and that mental health aspect is a very, very good thing, and I think that's important.
Yes, it is. It gives you that reason. It gives you the smile the first thing in the morning. You see your animal's face and you smile.
I smile as my dog French kisses me. It's just embarrassing, but that's what happens waking up with a dog. And Jeannie, you have a kitten, but you also have three adopted animals, I'm sorry.
I actually have 5 adopted animals. I have 3 dogs and 2 cats.
Have I seen the cats?
Yes.
Oh, okay, well, see, mental problems already. But your adoptions went well in every case. I mean, I think one, Hunter, was a little bit of a challenge. And how did you overcome that? I mean, you obviously stuck with it, and now he's a great dog, but it took a little bit of work on your part.
Well, Hunter came to me as a puppy, and he had parvo, which, as you know, is a virus that can kill them. And he was not a normal little puppy. He was kind of lethargic and easy. And he had some behavior issues, but we've gotten over most of them. A year later, I adopted Bella, who is my second beagle, and she actually has no sad story whatsoever. Her mom was found just wandering, pregnant, gave birth to 9 puppies. Bella was one of 9, at a beagle rescue in a home. So by the time I got her at 9 weeks, she actually had already been spayed and had all of her shots and has been a very healthy dog.
Excellent. And so, but you also do fostering. I know you're in touch with several organizations, one of which is trying to help me find homes for 2 of my cats that we have at the clinic. But you also do fostering, and I think recently you've been more involved with that.
For the past 5 years, I've fostered for one organization, which is Abandoned Angel Cocker Spaniel Rescue. And today I don't have a Cocker Spaniel, I have a kitten. But I also involved locally, just on our own, a group of people who rescue kittens, feral kittens, and then make them very lovable and adoptable and adopt them out.
And so the fostering work you do, what kind of background do you need? Because we were talking earlier about the background and how it can be very invasive and not so invasive. So for fostering or adoptions, when you're doing that type of thing, what kind of things are you looking for?
Are you asking if I'm looking for a family, or?
No,
what I
if
would-
there's a family who wishes to adopt an animal, what kind of things would you expect that family to present to you to show that they're qualified or a good family? Would you be looking, say, for, you'd want to know that they have the appropriate housing, and you'd want to know they had,
If they live in an apartment, are they allowed to have
Right.
pets? Yes, and then what's very important to my rescue is the references that come with them. If possible, a vet reference to know how they've cared for other pets. My rescue doesn't ask how much people make.
Right.
They don't require a fence.
right,
It's not very invasive.
right,
I may ask somebody, can we do a home check?
Right.
They may say yes. Most everybody says yes,
Yeah.
actually.
yeah. And then you want to make sure that the family is appropriate for the animal that they're getting, and
Definitely.
the kids are gonna learn, are doing okay, and,
So we have a meet and greet. We either have a meet and greet at my house, or we have a meet and greet at the family's house. And I basically just step back and observe how everyone interacts with the animal. And if I feel like it's a good fit, then the animal is adopted.
right. And we recently had a success story together.
Yes?
Milo. An animal was abandoned at my clinic, and unfortunately Milo was very young, but Milo needed to find a home. He couldn't live in my clinic for much longer, and Jeanne was able to find a home for Milo, and Milo is now with a happy family and enjoying himself, and I understand he's doing very well.
So I marketed Milo as Milo the Ninja, because it's always helpful to have a little story. And Milo had his own Facebook page.
Did he?
He had his own little blog on Maplewood Online. And he was out there every day, 3-4 times a day. I was posting things. So he really had a lot of exposure. And
So-
as a foster, you want to expose the animals that you have. That's part of the job of being a foster,
Right.
is helping your rescue expose the animal.
So that's an excellent point that we hadn't brought up yet. If you're fostering, you're also going to be helping people to understand this dog and bring it to the forefront, so people who want to adopt it can see it in the best light.
Yes, I usually foster Cocker Spaniels. Not all of them are great with children, and I'm very upfront with people. If they say, I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, I'll be right up front and say, well, this dog isn't for you.
Right, right. And that works out well. I think that's really interesting that you bring that up. So you've had good adoption experiences, and obviously you have good fostering experiences.
Yes.
Do you find there's a difference for you? Do you really want to give them up, or do you end up, as Nancy said, a failed
Foster
fos-
failure.
foster failure? Yes.
I have only been a foster failure once out of maybe 30 pets, and that was my dog Simone. I know, that's what happens when you have more kids. And my dog Simone, as soon as she came into the house, I really liked her. And people would call and say, can we meet Simone? And I was always, I
She's
have
sick."
an appointment. No, I have an appointment. I have to work. This time doesn't work for me. And I realized after a few weeks, I just wanted to keep her.
Right. Well, Simone is still with you now.
She is. She's a good dog.
So let me just ask, will you try and peel this cat off you? Nancy, how did you find the adoption process? Was it a favorable process for you to go through that adoption process with the Greyhound Friends in New Jersey?
For me, it was a favorable process. Greyhound Friends of New Jersey has a website, and they had an online adoption form, which I was able to fill out online. Somebody contacted me by phone to see, where I lived and what kind of dog I was interested in. They had profiles of dogs online I could look at, and they also had a kennel where some dogs were located, but they also have picnics where you could go see dogs available for adoption, where you could meet dogs. And that's where I first met Apache, and when I saw her, I knew she was the one.
Well, that's excellent.
Yeah.
That's really good. Well, I think there's a lot of things that we have to consider before we adopt or foster as people. And I think it's a great situation to be in. But I just want to make a couple of points, if I can. I think, number one, you have to be aware of the breed you're going to adopt. You definitely have to know what that breed is good for and what it's difficult at. You're going to have to take the breed, as soon as you've adopted or fostered, well, not so much fostered, but adopted, you'll want to take this animal to the veterinarian. And then there are a couple of things you can do to make it easier on cats and dogs. And one is a product called Feel-Away, which you can plug in your house, and that'll reduce the anxiety of a cat, or Adaptil, which will reduce the anxiety of a dog. And I think, not to just belabor this point, but we also adopt horses. At the end of this program, we will have a series of organizations that are up on the camera that will indicate all different kinds of adoptions, including equine and fostering organizations and adopting organizations for dogs and cats.
Okay, well, we've just about run out of time, so I want to thank you, Nancy, and I want to thank you, Jeannie, for coming in to visit with us. And it looks like Apache has decided to go to sleep, and whereas Patty Pan isn't settling down here. It looks like grabbing your necklace. This has been You and Your Pets. I'm Jim Horton, and I want to thank you very much for watching. Good night.